All right. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this webinar series. Today, we are joined by Mr. David Elizondo, and he is the Deputy District Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration here in San Antonio. And today, he is going to be presenting about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund and everything you need to know about that. So without further ado, take it away, David.
All right. Thank you, Samantha. And Madi, thank you very much for this potential or this collaboration here. I see 3 attendees. Is that correct for now, aside from whatever Facebook Live is? Okay. So we can make this very interactive, folks. So along the presentation, so you have any questions, I'll have my chat box open and I'll try to glance at it every so often to see any questions that you have. Last week, we did this training in Spanish in collaboration with Maestro. And so, of course, we wanted to also conduct this presentation in English. Of course, along the way, if anything that stands out to you, let myself know. I'm here for you all. I'm here to answer any questions that you have. So that being said, let's dive into this afternoon's presentation. So let me fire it up. Samantha, if you can give me a thumbs up once you get it. Good to go. All right, so for those that were not on the presentation last week, the San Antonio District Office does cover a total of 55 counties throughout Central and South Texas. So we are in San Antonio, but we cover Austin, San Angelo, Laredo, Victoria, LaGrange, and everything in between. And our goal is to get the information to you all, the entrepreneurs, the aspiring entrepreneurs, of the disaster assistance programs that are available on behalf of the U.S. Small Business Administration. There's sometimes we hear little funny sayings that the SBA was the best known kept secret until COVID happened, and all of a sudden, our agency, in collaboration with the IRS and Department of Treasury, we have been releasing program after program to provide disaster assistance to small business owners, such as the Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. What's live right now is the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant. But our newest program that just went live as of May 3rd is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Let me see how many times I can say that, because that's a tongue twister. So today's presentation, we're going to talk about RRF and what the program entails and how it came to light. So a quick overview of what we're going to discuss today, which is the RRF, how you are eligible to participate, who is considered to be a priority group member, what documents you're going to need, and lastly, how to utilize the funds. Okay, so ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, was signed into law on March 11th, 2021 by President Biden. There's many factors involved with ARPA. So RRF is just one pot of money inside this big old pool of ARPA funds. And so under ARPA, $28.6 billion has been allocated for restaurants, and we are the lead agency to appropriate the funds. It remains in place until the funds are expended. And I will tell you all right now, and I was telling Samantha before we started, that even though this went live May 3rd, there's already been 21,000 applications nationwide that have been approved. So my goal today is to get y'all in the system. Hopefully y'all fall under the priority group to get y'all to apply as soon as possible. SBA may provide funding up to $5 million per location and not to exceed under $10 million total for your and any affiliated businesses you may have. So if you have one big LLC umbrella and you have multiple sub LLCs under your big LLC umbrella, you can only go up to $10 million. Lastly, the minimum award is $1,000. So after you do your calculations, which we'll go over here shortly, if you see that your gross receipts minus any grants that you've already received from SBA equate to, let's just say $800, unfortunately, you would not qualify for any funds. But nonetheless, let's go over the calculations. First and foremost, eligibility types of organizations. So if you are a C Corp, S Corp, partnership, sole proprietor, you're an independent contractor. So if you work for a small business, but you're a 1099 to them, you still qualify for this RRF as well. What's been coming online lately is B corporations, which basically means that part of your business model is given back to the community. Unfortunately, there is no checkbox under the application, so you would either select the C Corp or S Corp on the application, depending on how you are taxed. Refer to your tax return to see if self-employed versus sole proprietor distinction. So when you're filling out this application, there is going to be a question about submitting a 4506T, which is your tax transcripts. So if you've already submitted your 2019 tax return and your 2020, that's going to be requested. And just know that it's not just for RRF, but anytime you ask for any disaster assistance, 9 times out of 10, I want to say 95, 99% of the time, a 4506T will be requested. So what is this program? Who are we targeting with this RRF initiative? We are targeting restaurants, food stands, food trucks, caterers, bars, saloons, lounges, taverns, snack and non-alcoholic beverage bars, such as a coffee shop, yogurt shop, ice cream shop. If you are a licensed facility or premises of a beverage alcohol producer where the public may taste, sample, and purchase products such as distillery, but you also can let folks sample. If you're at a winery, you let folks sample your wines. These are the types of things that would qualify. The main thing is you must be able to demonstrate 33% or more of food and beverages go towards your overall business model, your revenues, in order to qualify. So we've had examples of, let's say, a bowling alley. Does a bowling alley qualify for this? Well, what happens at a bowling alley? You're serving food, you're serving beverages. So if a particular bowling alley can demonstrate that 33% or more of the gross receipts went to food and beverages, they may indeed also qualify for these funds. Okay, so who is not eligible? So if a particular entity is owned by the state or local governments, as of March 13th, 2020, owns or operates more than 20 locations. So if you own, 22 locations, unfortunately, you would not qualify. I think for this particular audience, I think it's safe to say that y'all have less than 20 locations. If you submitted an application for the Shutter Venues Operators Grants, it may hinder your ability to apply for RRF if you are a public traded company, if you're permanently closed. So we understand, like during 2020, the city of San Antonio in particular said, hey, you cannot have X amount of capacity. So a lot of small businesses had to learn to pivot their small business to focus on takeout primarily. And then slowly but surely, of course, we went from 25% to 50%. Now we're at 100% capacity again. But for those that temporarily closed their doors and reopened, you still qualify. But for those small businesses that permanently closed and you're trying to start up again, you would not unfortunately qualify for these funds. If you are a nonprofit, you do not qualify. And again, as I mentioned early on during the presentation, if you do not qualify for at least $1,000 based off the calculations I'm going to show you, you may not receive any funds as well. And I see one question came through. Is that correct? Robert, these slides, I would get with Samantha after this to get a copy of the presentation. I believe this is being recorded on Facebook Live. So the reason why I don't want to share a presentation because the information is constantly changing. So I'm presenting this content today and it may change by next week. So for reference, I would go to the recording. Is that safe to say, Samantha?
Yes, it is. This webinar will be recorded. It'll be on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube page. So the Maestro Center YouTube page, it'll be there as well.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Moving on. So bankruptcy. So here's another interesting fact about this RRF. Most of the times when you hear the term bankruptcy, you automatically think that I'm not going to get any sort of assistance. Well, that's not the case for RRF. Here it states if you are operating under an approved plan of reorganization. So you already talked to the IRS, you're trying to reorganize under Chapter 11, 12, or 13, and you meet all program requirements, then you are eligible. If you temporarily close your doors due to state or local restrictions or other pandemic causes, but are still in operation or have reopened, you are eligible. So if you, as I mentioned last slide, if you permanently close, you're not eligible. If you filed a Chapter 7 liquidation bankruptcy, liquidation meaning you are getting rid of your assets, right? You're in debt, whether that's a private bank or another SBA loan like 78504, and you're trying to liquidate your assets paid off, then unfortunately you would not qualify. and also if you are not under an approved plan of reorganization. Work with me here. Franchises. I don't know if I have any franchises on this call, but if you're ever curious to know about franchises and if who's approved by SBA, I would look up the SBA franchise directory. A simple Google search, if you type SBA franchise directory, it should point you to sba.gov website of who's on this directory. That basically means that these franchises have been vetted already by the federal government. The franchise disclosure document has already been reviewed by general counsel. You're good to go. But if you are a franchise owner that's not part of the SBA franchise directory, that doesn't hinder you from applying for this particular grant program. You still can apply. You just have to submit your FDD, your franchise disclosure document, to franchise@sba.gov. Biggest takeaway from what we covered so far is making sure you're going to SBA's website. We've had a lot of instances where people are referring to, oh, I don't know, if you go to Google and you see ad at the very top, so it's not really an SBA link, it's to an outside provider. Be careful of that. At the very start of this pandemic, there is a website called sba.com that a lot of folks were going to. But if you go to sba.com, it should say on their splash page that there's no affiliation to the federal government. But if you get involved in the system, you're applying for this fund, you're applying for the Paycheck Protection Program, you're applying for the Shelter Venues Operators Grant, keep an eye out on your inbox for sba.gov email address. And then also, we've had a lot of cases where sba.gov emails have been getting sent to your junk, to your spam folder. So if you did apply for one of these programs, periodically check your junk, your spam folder to make sure you didn't get an email from us. Okay, going back to RRF. So here is a little program, cross-program eligibility matrix of programs that you can apply for. So if you apply for RRF, can you apply for the Paycheck Protection Program? Yes, you can. If I apply for RRF, can I apply for Shelter Venues Operators Grant? If you have a pending application for the Shelter Venues Operators Grant, then no. Can I apply for the EIDL? The EIDL was one of the first programs that went online to help small businesses recover from COVID. The original deadline for EIDL was December 31st of 2020, but has since been extended to December 31st of 2021. So it is a loan. So unlike this RRF initiative, RRF is strictly a grant. The Paycheck Protection Program technically is a loan. As long as you use 60% or more for payroll purposes, then it becomes a grant. The EIDL program is a loan. The Shelter Venues Operators grant is a grant. And so that's what's key here. So I just want to make sure I distinguish, the loan programs that we have and the grant programs that we have. If you apply for the Shelter Venues Operators Grant, if you did, then you have to go to Systems for Award Management, also known as SAM.gov, to create a profile. You have to get a DUNS number and a cage identifier. For RRF, you don't need to do that. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, disregard this entire comments about DUNS and cage. You don't need to do that. To apply for RRF, you're going to go to SBA's website directly. You're going to talk to one of our point of sale vendors, which I'll go over here shortly. Making sure that you have your individual taxpayer identification number. You go to IRS website. I personally would get an ITIN and EIN in lieu of having to put your social security number on all these documents, because obviously your social security number is PII. So I would highly encourage you all to get your ITIN, to get your EIN from IRS website. So these are what happens or what if scenarios here. But this is based off the feedback we've been getting from the field. How is this calculated? First and foremost, if you have received PPP funds, it will be subtracted from the RF if you do qualify. For example, if you apply for PPP, you got a loan for $50,000 to go towards payroll expenses. When you put in this calculation for RF, you get $100,000. They're going to subtract $50,000. So that means you're still going to get a grant for $50,000. So it's a grant and a grant. In other words, we're trying to minimize people double dipping by getting two different grant programs. You'll be verified using your EIN, your ITIN, and your social security number. If you already received PPP, making sure that you make sure the information is the same that you submitted for PPP and for RRF. And it will be cross-verified. right now, as we speak, we're going through a lot of cases of fraud, and do know that a lot of these applications are being audited to make sure that the information that you're putting is correct, making sure that the bank account information that you put in your triple P application and RF is the same. So just be consistent with what you previously submitted if you have requested previous disaster assistance. And then the bottom one is if you already applied for the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant, you cannot have a pending application in order to process your RF. So I'm going to pause there. I see another check come through. Robert is saying EINs are taking up to 2 months, by the way. You know, it's a good point there, Robert. I know IRS, we're in the middle of tax season. They're also getting inundated with the tax transcripts, the 4506Ts. So if you don't have an EIN, it's not a deal breaker to apply for these programs. It's just encouraged that you do apply for your EIN item. But nonetheless, good point. I'll pause here for a second. So why this presentation was important to collaborate with Maestro. And I was just telling Samantha that prior to this presentation starting, we normally work with entities that reach out to us saying, hey, can you present to our chamber? Can you present to our nonprofit group? Can you present to our EDC, to the congressional offices, to our stakeholders, et cetera? I know Maestro's mission, and the mission is to really assist the socially disadvantaged and economically disadvantaged small businesses. And long and behold, this RRF came out, and guess who they're targeting? You know, socially disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged small business owners. This is trial by error. So if you remember when Triple P first went live, we opened up the floodgates for all small businesses, and no disrespect or not trying to point out anyone in particular, but a lot of small businesses that probably shouldn't have received assistance. They didn't meet the letter, or they met the letter of the law, but they didn't meet the spirit of the law. So you all may recall there's particular law firms here in San Antonio, prominent lawyers, steakhouse franchises that receive Triple P funding, and what was happening was these little small mom and pop small businesses did not have a fair share of the Triple P funds. Well, guess what? For RRF, that changes. So we have a priority period now, which is active as we speak. The priority period began May 3rd. So that means at the end of May 24th, which is Monday, the priority period finishes. That means May 25th, the floodgates open once again for anyone that meets the criteria of RRF. So during this time frame, as we speak right now, if you are a woman-owned, you're veteran-owned, at least 51% or more, I should say, and socially, economically disadvantaged applicants, you can apply. Come day 22, which is May 25th, all eligible applications will be processed and funded until program funds are exhausted. Going on to priority groups. And so as I mentioned early on, folks, 21,000 applications have already been approved. And we're not talking about received, we're talking about approved already. So if you have not applied, my goal today is get you squared away to start applying now for this program. There at UTSA, we actually have a devoted office called the COBRA is the acronym, the Center of Business Accelerator for those impacted by COVID-19. So if you need assistance to apply, they're there for you. But nonetheless, let's make sure that you meet the criteria. Let's make sure that you're fully aware of what this program entails. So as I mentioned, 51% owned, and the management and daily operations are controlled by a woman. They're a veteran, socially, economically disadvantaged. You must self-certify. So that's what's different here is you have to self-certify versus the federal government verifying for you that you are one of the three aforementioned. Okay. For those that don't know what the definitions are for socially disadvantaged and economically disadvantaged, here it is. So socially disadvantaged individuals are those who have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias because of their identity as a member of a group without regard to their individual qualities. Economically disadvantaged individuals are those socially disadvantaged individuals whose ability to compete in the free enterprise system has been impaired due to diminished capital and credit opportunities as compared to others in the same area who are not socially disadvantaged. Okay, so that's the general definition across the board for federal governments is who's considered socially, who's considered economically disadvantaged. This has been a case already with potential fraud, is people reorganizing their small business to say the woman's going to take over 51% or more of the veteran. So therefore we meet the criteria for a priority period, but then afterwards, we're going to go back to the way it was. There's going to be records that have to be kept in place for this program, this RF. So just because you get the funds doesn't mean that you go running into the wild, wild west and we never hear from you again. No, rest assured, there's going to be a reporting required by the federal government once you receive these funds. So I mentioned calculations. Okay, so there's 4 different calculations that SBA is using for those to determine how much I apply for RF or how much am I eligible for. So this is the first scenario here. For those that started business prior to or on January 1st of 2019, you're going to use this formula. You're going to use your 2019 gross receipts minus your 2020 gross receipts. If you receive triple P, that's a key word here, if, that's going to give you your total amount. So for simplicity purposes here, 2019 gross receipts were 100,000. 2020 gross receipts were 50,000. My business was cut in half. If I did not apply for triple P, then I would get 50,000. But if I did receive triple P of, let's say, 25,000, so that's 100 minus 50 minus 25 that I received, then you're going to get only 25,000. Okay. Scenario number 2. If you began operations partially through 2019, so you started in 2019, I don't know, let's just say April, May of 2019, you're going to use this particular calculation. You're going to get your average 2019 monthly gross receipts, multiply that times 12. Okay, then you're going to subtract your 2020 gross receipts, then subtract again if you received any triple P funds, and that gives you your total amount. I'll give you the latest example here. I had a coffee shop recently reach out to me to apply for RF. If you recall, they are technically eligible, 33% or more. It's going towards, I'm sorry, I got distracted. It's starting to pour here in my house. Sorry, I got distracted there. Her 2020 gross receipts were actually more than 2019. If you think about it, most folks did not want to go inside the coffee shop. Let me go through the drive-through. I'm working from home. I need my coffee. So in this particular case, she did not qualify for RF funds because her 2020 gross receipts exceeded the 2019. I hope this presentation doesn't cut, Samantha, because it's starting to pour where I'm at right now. Okay, so scenario number 3. If you began operations on or between January 1st, 2020 and March 10th, 2021, and have not opened up yet, but have incurred eligible expenses. So here's something interesting. Although this program is going live March 11th of this year, if you incurred any eligible expenses starting February 15th of 2020, you can apply for this program. I find that so unique. I mean, they're allowing you to go back to February 15th of 2020. Let's just say you were building out your restaurant. You had to expand your outdoor seating to follow CDC protocols of 6 feet apart, 2 meters. And that's part of your eligible expenses that you can apply for this particular program. So again, it just depends on when you started your business on which calculation you're going to use. So we got to backtrack here. So if you started before or on January 1st, you're going to use scenario number 1. If you started partially in 2019, you're going to use number 2. If you started this past year, 2020, or if you're not fully opened, you're going to use scenario number 3. So those are 3 different calculations that we've covered so far. There is a 4th scenario, which states if you operate multiple locations. So if you only have 1 location, this does not apply to you. But if you have multiple locations, you may want to be cautious of how you apply, because obviously we want to make sure that you get the most amount of funds. It says here, you may calculate funding amounts for their locations using separate calculation methods and then aggregate the amounts together. Remember early on I said you can only get up to $5 million at the most per location. but in total, you can get up to $10 million. So again, the key numbers here are 5 per location, 10 in total. What can I exclude from 2020? This has been very commonly asked. I have people calling our district office of how do I calculate for this RRF initiative? So if you received the first draw or second draw triple P, you can exclude it from your gross receipts. Sba Section 1112 payments. If you don't know what that is, this probably doesn't apply to you. This basically entails if you had an existing 7A loan, 504 loan, this SBA stepped in and said, we're going to cover 6 months of your payments in 2020 or 3 months in 2021. And that's, again, if you had an existing micro loan, 7A loan, 504 loan. If you got the EIDL loan, the EIDL advance, the targeted EIDL advance, or any other grants under the CARES Act, you can exclude it. Any state or local business grants. So I know the city of San Antonio, the Economic Development Department had some grants. The LIFT Fund had some grants for small businesses last year in 2020. You can exclude that. And the Randolph-Shepard Act Financial Relief and Restoration Payments Appropriation. Again, if you don't know what that is, this probably isn't applicable to you. Okay, so I'm a small business owner. I, David Elizondo, own ABC 123 Incorporated. What can I do to apply, and what documents are needed to apply for RRF? So unlike the Paycheck Protection Program, where you were talking to an SBA participating lender, unlike the Shutter Venues Operators Grant, which is through grants.gov, you're going directly onto SBA's website, restaurants.sba.gov, to apply. You don't need to create a profile on any external websites. You're going directly to restaurants.sba.gov to apply. Also, what's new for RRF, what SBA did, and I think this was genius, is get other folks, other entities to help you apply. Point of sale vendors is what we call them. And if you notice, my face got bright over here, is because I'm opening up my cheat sheet. SBA has 4 point of sale vendors, and those are Toast, Square, Clover, and NCR Corporation. And again, this is all on SBA's website, sba.gov/RRF. That's how you can find out who are the point of sale vendors. The last way you can apply, so if someone's not too tech savvy, they can always call the number. And even if you applied, you have questions, you want to know what the status is on your application, this is the number you're going to call. They're open, I believe, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time. So if you have problems with your application, you want to check on the status of your application, or if you want to submit your application online, you can call this 1-844 number 279-8898, and they can help you as well. We have at least 150 SBA folks devoted specifically for this RRF initiative to take your calls. What's going to be needed is SBA Form 3172. Again, I saw the Samantha put SBA's website there. We have a hyperlink of that form, the SBA Form 3172. We mentioned the 4506T is going to be needed. Any gross receipts documentation. So if you have your IRS Form 1120, 1040 Schedule C, your partnership IRS Form 1065, any bank statements, externally, internally prepared financial statements. So if you have a CPA that's helped you with your income statements and your profit and loss statements, or if you have like QuickBooks, you can extract that information to put it on this application. One particular inquiry that we have is someone who has all of their documents on the internet. Can I just copy and paste the link onto the application? The answer is no. So SBA is very cautious about clicking external links. And the last thing I want is for you all to put your external links onto the application, and your application is automatically going to get rejected because you included links versus numbers. So keep that in mind if you have not applied for RRF. So there it is there. How do I get help applying? So that's the number reiterated again. You have something called the SBA Resource Partners here in San Antonio. I'm sure Maestro can help you all, but we also have nonprofits here in San Antonio that can help you all apply, such as the Small Business Development Center located at UTSA. There's the Women's Business Center at the Central Public Library. There's also SCORE, a group of volunteers that's at the Central Public Library. And most importantly, we have this all translated in more than 30 different languages on SBA's website. So in case you as a small business owner, your partner is better able to comprehend this content in Spanish, we actually have it on SBA's website in Spanish as well, or other foreign languages. Again, there's over 30 on SBA's website. Here, we're also requesting attestation certifications that you must certify that current economic and uncertainty makes the funding request necessary to support ongoing or anticipated operations. That's basically providing a statement as to why the funds are needed. Making sure, for best practices, making sure that you complete all the documentation. Try to fill out the application as much as possible. Don't leave any areas blank, because that may delay the processing of your application. Making sure that it's correct. If you apply for RRF or Triple P or EIDL, make sure that the information is the same that you put on your application for your small business. And as you can see, once again, they're really emphasizing calling this number here. So here at the district office, I've had multiple people call and say, David, can you check the status of my application? Within the big SBA umbrella, that's a totally different division that we don't have access to. They have access to a different database. So unfortunately, I cannot see what the status is of your application. So if you have, again, submitted your application, the 1844 number is what you want to call to check on the status of it, to make any corrections with your application. Use of funds. So what can I use the funds for? And a lot of folks have questioned this here. What are eligible business expenses? Whenever you do your calculations, this is what you want to take into consideration: your payroll cost, your utility payments, maintenance expenses, your supplies, food and beverage expenses, construction of outdoor seating. So again, we use the example of restaurants that are having to pivot their small business and having to expand outdoor seating. Well, this is part of that, those funds that you can apply for. Any payments on business mortgage obligation or debt, any business operating expenses. So marketing fees, insurance, licenses, point of sale equipment. Like if you have QuickBooks, I know there's point of sale systems, all that can be included under business expenses. Again, the funds must be spent or on expenses that were or are incurred between February 15th and 2023, excuse me. So 2 years to the date that this law was passed for the restaurant revitalization. So 2 years, excuse me. Another question that I've received is, if I close my business before I exhaust all the funds, what do I do with the remaining balance? So if I was approved for $100,000, I used $50,000 and then had to close my business, do I get to keep the other $50,000? The answer is no. Again, that's where we're expecting small businesses to keep track of all their expenses, because if you do close before the March 11, 2023 time frame, those funds will need to be returned to the federal government. Here in the near future, SBA is going to be sending out additional guidance on how they want you all as small business owners to provide a detailed report of how the funds are being exhausted. Okay, so because you receive the funds doesn't mean I don't need to keep track of how I'm utilizing this grant. You need to keep track of it. And at the end of each year, SBA is going to say, hey, we need a self-reported, unaudited report. You can give it the CPA. We're not telling you have to give it the CPA, but it's highly recommended that you talk to a CPA so they can give you a breakdown as a small business owner, how you're utilizing these funds. So there it is. That's for more information. You can go to sba.gov website /restaurants or RRF. It'll take you to the same domain. If you need help putting this together, reach out to our resource partners by going to sba.gov /local assistance, type it in your zip code. And like, for example, UTSA, Women's Business Center, a score should pop up. And if you want to learn more, of other programs that we have in addition to RF, so if you want to learn more about the EIDL program, the Paycheck Protection Program, which is still technically in existence until the end of this month, if you go to sba.gov /relief, you can learn more about that. Right now, only community financial institutions are accepting Triple P applications. So if you have not, keyword here, if you have not submitted your Triple P application, you can still submit it through CFIs, is what we call them, community financial institutions such as Lift Fund, People Fund, River City, Federal Credit Union, IBC. Those are just a few. We still have more that you can apply with. But if you go to Chase, if you go to Bank of America, if you go to Wells Fargo, they are no longer accepting PPP applications. Just keep that in mind. Okay, what's going on here? We also have a Facebook page. If you go to facebook.com/SBA.gov, you can see this there. I follow SBA's page on Facebook. If you can go to our Twitter page, and also from a local office standpoint, if you go to sba.gov/updates, again, it'll tell you to type in your zip code so you can start receiving emails from us. Because unlike small business owners, like most people are familiar with Constant Contacts, we do not have access to your email address. So it's not like we have a database of all the folks' email address. It's more like once you opt in, it's in this internal database that we cannot see. So whenever we do an email blast, that's when you'll receive emails from our local office. So if you want to get to know upcoming trainings that we're doing or any initiatives that we're focusing on in agency, something that's high level that we should highlight, this is how you're going to stay in contact with us. And that is an overview of RRF. Again, we want for you to apply now. If you are a socially disadvantaged minority, if you are a woman-owned 51% more, you're a veteran-owned 51% or more, now is the time to apply, because come May 25th, everybody can apply, okay? And as mentioned, I'm going to say it one last time, already 21,000 applications have been approved. That's not even including the ones that are pending right now. So we want to get you in the system as soon as possible. That being said, Samantha, I'll turn it back to you, ma'am, for any additional questions.
Yes, thank you, David, for that presentation. It was very informational. So we want to open the floor up for any questions. David is here to answer anything that you may have. And I do want to remind everyone that this presentation is being recorded and will be available on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube page, so you can find it there after this webinar is over. And I think we do have a question from Robert Garcia. Can you expand on the B Corporation you mentioned?
Sure. So, Robert, the B Corporation is one of the newer ways you can structure your small business. It is led by the IRS. So I can assure you, if you go to irs.gov website, you can see how a B Corporation differs than a C Corp or an S Corp. I have met one business owner so far who is structured under B Corp, and he did mention that a certain amount of the proceeds must be given back to the community. I think that's the biggest role of a B Corp. So irs.gov would be the best website for reference for B corporations.
Do you mind putting back up the contact information just so if anyone missed that, they can have that for their reference?
Which slide in particular, ma'am?
The one near the end with all the contact. I think it was like the third, the last.
So this one?
One more up. No, actually, yeah, that one. You were right.
This one.
Okay. Yeah. So there is the contact information for anyone who has any additional questions. Let's see, I think we have. Okay, Robert Garcia has another question. What expenses would not be eligible for fund use?
Okay, so I'm over here typing to Robert, but I'll answer that here. So what is not eligible?
Yes, what expenses would not be eligible for fund use?
Anything that does not fall under the current slide that you're currently seeing. So you still see my PowerPoint, correct? So here are the main expenses. These are the eligible business expenses. So if you have an expense that is outside of this area, the chances are that it would not be considered an eligible expense for the purpose of RRF. So again, the main thing is to focus on something that's restaurant specific. It impacted your supply chain management. We even have people saying, what if I have my majority of my expenses that are marketing? If you want to use RRF for the sole purpose of marketing your small business, you have that option. So the main thing is you're documenting all this.
We have another question. What are the rules regarding taxability for the grant? Is it similar to PPP?
So taxability of the grant. So my understanding, this is different than the triple P, right? Because the triple P is technically a loan that is converted into a grant as long as 60% or more used for payroll purposes. And that's where the taxability portion is. Now, on this particular program, Robert, this is strictly a grant. There is no way this would be converted back to a loan. So taxability of a grant is my understanding is you cannot be taxed on this here. Might be, I think there was a question on this year's taxes, and US CPA could fully answer this, that, the stimulus had to be reported, but I know there was no questions regarding grants received to small businesses for this year's taxes. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Monica F asks, can we use the funds to pay employees?
Yes. That's the biggest one that I think they want these funds to go for is payroll costs.
Robert Garcia asks, does that mean the expenses are still deductible?
No.
Okay, and we have one more question from Ruben Luna. Have the funds been depleted? What happens if they are depleted?
Funds are still available as of right now. This is going to be changed on a daily basis. What happens from here is we hope that Congress appropriates more funds for RRF if indeed the funds exhaust faster than what was anticipated. And quite honestly, I see the funds being exhausted fairly quickly, especially after May 25th, whenever it's opened up to all restaurants. Good questions.
Alrighty. If you have any last minute questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. But I want to thank you, David, for taking time out of your day to give us this presentation. I encourage those who have more questions to use the resources that were in the presentation, to reach out and if you have any more questions. And like I said before, you can reference this presentation on our social media pages. So I think that's it for today. Thank you so much.
All right, perfect, Samantha. Madi, thank you very much for this opportunity. I definitely look forward to collaborating with you all more in the future. And if there is any follow-up questions after today's presentation, Samantha, Madi, send them my way and I'll gladly assist whoever I can.
Of course. Thank you again.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.